Hi, welcome to the next installment in the EpiDoc tutorials series. The full program of this series is at the link you find at the bottom of this screen now. You can also find that link below the YouTube video on there if you're coming to this not from the program but want to find the rest of the things that we have available. In this session, Martina Filosa from the University of Köln is going to talk to us about authority lists and how these work in EpiDoc. So go ahead, Martina.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabby, for this kind introduction. And now let's go to the authority lists. And specifically authority lists in EpiDoc. What are authority lists, first of all? They are pretty much a controlled vocabulary. They might be either external or internal to a project, and we shall see examples of both of these authority lists in a few minutes. And they are used for enforcing consistency within a corpus and also between editors, because we know that when we want to refer to something, it might be as well disambiguous and normalized. They are used within a corpus for information that comes up over and over again, which is the case of, for example, epigraphs, inscriptions, or also other text-bearing objects, for example, like seals. They are used in this case in order to prevent the repeated entering of the very same data all over again, and also to separate what we are saying in the text, so from the content of the text and from the information that we want to give about said text. And last but not least, authority lists make way easier the linking to external resources. Let's see some examples of authority lists. This example that you see here with the first name and the ref, the content of the ref is a link bringing us to the lexicon of Greek personal names, which we can use as an external authority list. So we can disambiguate by saying that this person is exactly the person this links brings us to. If we want to have an internal authority list, an authority list which is internal to our project, this is the way we refer to it. So instead of the link to the lexicon of Greek personal names, we have an internal link to a file called, in this case, persons.xml, which is the authority list. And everything that comes after the # is the XML ID pointing exactly to this item, to this person in the authority lists. And that's how an item in the authority list persons.xml is built. It has to have at the very least, has to have an XML ID, which is in this case diodode1, and also has to have a name. So what a normalized name and a disambiguous name that helps us to index this piece of information. In this case, we also have an identification number type, which is the link that we said was to the lexicon of Greek personal names, since we also have the possibility to link to this external resource. So as we can see, it makes our information more clear, more structured, and also makes linking to external resources easier. Authority lists can be used to index information regarding historical and also descriptive data, such as, for example, material, object type, dating criteria, lettering and or hand types for paleography, and also places, for example, origin places, find spots, repositories, and so on and so forth. And we can also, authority lists are also used to index elements mentioned within the text, so within the edition. And we can have, in that case, person names, so like an onomastic authority list, or also places, events, offices, and you go on as you please. We have here examples of general lists, and if you want to retrieve these examples, please go on the link which is on this slide, where you will find more examples of this kind. In this case, we have, for example, the Authoritylist Materials Xml, which is a list of, you guessed it, materials. And we have, in this case, for example, marble, bronze, stone, and you see how it is built up. So again, we have an XML ID, and which is inserted within an item, which is again within a list. This is how you would refer to this kind of list in your XML file. As you see in the example below, we refer, as we saw, by referring, sorry, within the tag material with a ref, we refer to our authority list materials.xml -s. So we want to see it's bronze, and we want to see, you have to retrieve this information from the authority list called materials.xml. We also have another way of doing so, which we won't explore in this moment, but we can also write a piece of code saying whenever in a tag called material we have a ref with an #, please go retrieve this information in the authority list material.xml. This makes, of course, the tagging easier and lighter, if I may. We then have the authority list for persons, and in this case we have again a list person, and the item is not an item, but it's a tag called person. Again, an XML ID, a person name, and in this case, two links to different external resources. The first one is, again, the Lexicon of Greek Personal Names, and the second one is the Prosopography of the Later Roman Empire, which is not a link per se, but it's a reference. Again, for persons, we can add as much information as we want, pretty much. We can have, for example, dates at birth, at death, or the florid of the person. We can also have events that characterize this person's life, if we have them at hand, and also references. And we see here, for example, that in the second person, we have, for example, the florid, and with the attributes not before, not after. And also we can add a relation. And in this case, for example, we have we created a relation between pers1 and pers2, and you can see it on the screen. There's also the possibility of indexing person names, so in a kind of onomasticon, so to say, and this is made by making use of a list nym, and the item within the list, it's called a nym. And again, here you see that we have an XML ID, and there's also the name under which we will index our information. Again, another very important piece of information to that you might want to index in your corpus are places, of course. And places are actually very interesting because we can link them to gazetteers such as Pleiades or geonames, or also can give their coordinates, as you can see in the second example. And as you can see, there's the authority list is built within a list place, and each item has the place tag. Again, we also have events, for example, as you can see here, and we have a list event and an event tag. For example, here we have the edict of Caracalla, and we can specify with an attribute, for example, either punctual, such as when, as the first one, or with a range of dates, as in the second example. We also have external vocabularies we can refer to. For example, the Eagle vocabularies that you can access to with the link that you can see on the slide. And the Eagle vocabularies, for example, have a controlled list of expressions pertaining to the categories that you can see here on the screen, such as material, execution technique, type of inscription, object type, decoration, dating criteria, and state of preservation. And we can, as we saw before for the lexicon of Greek personal names, we can either refer to it in our XML file. For example, the first one, we have an object type, ref, and the real link to the very resource. Or we can embed it into our authority list. As you can see, this is the list of the authority list of the materials. And we have an item, which is marmor, so marble. And we add a corresp, which is saying to us, this item equals the link in the control vocabulary of Eagle pertaining to the item marble. Again, for those of you who are using FS or who will use FS, authority lists are very important. And if you want to find them, you have to look on the path that is the very first point of this slide, because authority lists live in web apps root content XML authority. And don't worry, you will learn this path by heart. Authority lists in FS are used to produce default indices and facets. And the ones that you will find within your FS folder are the ones that you see here on the slide. And they're the basic feature for indexing and faceted search. And if you want to know more about the authority lists in FS, please go to the FS wiki at the link that you see at the bottom of this slide. So to wrap up, a small recap. Again, what are authority lists? Authority lists are lists that contain information that we want to extract from our edition or from our metadata. And we have in our file, in our XML file, we have terms or data that point to the authority lists in the way that we saw before. And authority lists must contain at least an XML ID, which is the unambiguous way that link our data from our XML file to the authority list, and a name for indexing. This is the very list that an authority list has to contain. If we want to go deeper, and if we can, of course, that's not always that we have a whole bunch of information. We can also add some information regarding for example, links to external vocabularies or resources, or also we can disambiguate or other information, as we saw before, for example, for the prosopography list, when we can add, for example, date of birth, date of death, or also other information that might be interesting to your corpus. And that would be all from me.
Great, thank you very much, Martina. That's brilliant.
Thank you.